Big homie wanted to look like a gay painter.
50 Cent has been on Jay-Z's neck for years, but now it looks like Jay is finally firing back, breaking his silence in a clip that's lighting up the timeline. And once you hear what's being alleged, you'll realize this isn't just another rap feud. This is a high-level power battle that goes way beyond the studio, way beyond chart positions, and straight into the boardrooms where careers get approved, blocked, and quietly erased. Because what makes this situation so crazy is we're not talking about some old-school late 90s beef that should have stayed buried. This is about something far more recent, something 50 Cent claims was orchestrated behind the scenes to keep him off one of the biggest stages in America, the Super Bowl. You remember February 13th, 2022, Super Bowl 56 at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. The culture was hyped because for the first time, hip-hop was finally the main event, with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar taking over halftime. And then, out of nowhere, 50 Cent pulled up hanging upside down, performed in a club, hit that iconic pose, and the internet went insane with memes, nostalgia, and pure shock. But according to 50, that legendary moment almost didn't happen, and he says the reason has a name: Jay-Z. Here's where the power dynamics get serious. Since 2019, Jay-Z's company Roc Nation has worked with the NFL to help produce and shape the Super Bowl halftime show, meaning Jay has major influence over who gets selected, how the show is built, and what the world sees on the biggest stage in American television. And 50 claims Jay used that influence to try to keep him completely out of the lineup. Then in December 2024, 50 went on Cameron's show, Talk with Flea, and aired it all out. He claimed Jay allegedly went straight to Dr. Dre and Eminem and told them he didn't want 50 anywhere near that performance. And that's where this story gets even more intense, because if 50's telling it right, what happened next wasn't just industry politics, it was a loyalty test. And Eminem's response proved just how deep that bond really runs.
Look, when Jay signed his contract, the big one was with Beyoncé. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. Now those trophies came rolling in, buddy.
And listen closely, 50 isn't blaming creative differences or some harmless scheduling issue. He's accusing Jay-Z of using real corporate influence to deliberately block another artist from a major career moment. And when you really sit with that, it becomes clear this isn't just two rappers who don't get along. This is about power, control, and what happens when old tension from the streets gets repackaged into boardroom decisions that can change someone's entire trajectory. But the story gets even crazier, because 50 also claimed Eminem stepped in and forced the issue. According to 50, Eminem allegedly gave the NFL a hard ultimatum. If 50 Cent wasn't part of the halftime show, then Eminem wasn't performing either. And this version of events didn't just come from 50 alone. Tony Yayo, a longtime G-Unit member, backed it up during an interview with DJ Vlad, making this behind-the-scenes battle look even more real than people expected.
Jay-Z told Dr. Dre, just for people who's not up on this, or Eminem, that he didn't want you to perform part of that Super Bowl they had a couple years ago.
Now really think about what that would mean for a second. One of the most hyped halftime shows in Super Bowl history almost lost Eminem, one of the biggest draws on the entire lineup, because Jay-Z allegedly tried to keep 50 Cent off that stage. And at that point, this isn't petty beef anymore. That's the kind of corporate power play that could have cost the NFL millions, embarrassed an entire organization, and turned the biggest night in entertainment into behind-the-scenes chaos. And 50 hasn't been shy about the claim either. In a July 2024 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he said they were actively trying to leave him out, that people were pushing hard to keep him off the show, and that it took a fight just for him to stay included. He even implied it was so serious, it should be written into the NFL's paperwork. Eminem wasn't performing unless 50 was part of it. Then in October 2024, during his appearance on The Breakfast Club, 50 doubled down again. He alleged Jay-Z blocked him, and that early on, the situation was being framed like it was simply an NFL decision to avoid any direct backlash. But 50 claims he saw right through it, because people close to the industry allegedly told him exactly where that resistance was coming from. So the real question becomes this: Why would one of hip-hop's most powerful executives allegedly go out of his way to sabotage another artist's Super Bowl moment? According to 50 himself, it all traces back to a rivalry that goes way deeper than music, a competition that's been brewing for years and never truly ended.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I just think,
Threatened?
yeah,
Possibly?
not even threatened. You know, I think it's just when you take the competition from, like, our culture is competitive, man.
Right.
It is, but I think when it goes past the music itself to blocking things in business, then I don't understand.
50 Cent has openly suggested that his explosive rise in television, especially the power universe on Stars, didn't just make him successful, it made him a direct competitor in the entertainment business. At that point, this stopped being about who had the hottest verse or the biggest first-week sales. This became about empires, market share, and who gets to shape the future narrative of hip-hop as a business. And in 50's view, the NFL may have taken the public heat early on, but he believes the decision was Roc Nation's from the jump. The corporate shield was up, the blame had a safe place to land, but 50 says he knew exactly who was pulling the strings the entire time. What makes the allegation even more explosive is that Jay-Z has never publicly addressed it. Not once. And that silence has only amplified the speculation, with fans split on what it really means. Some see it as Jay staying above the drama, a calculated refusal to engage. Others view it as the loudest kind of quiet, a sign that 50's claims may have hit closer to home than anyone in Jay's camp would ever admit. Either way, the debate spilled everywhere, and by September 2024, the conversation got even bigger when Cameron and Maze discussed the idea that Jay-Z may have blocked Lil Wayne from performing at the 2025 Super Bowl over old tension, drawing a direct parallel to the 50 Cent situation. In the public's mind, it started to look less like a one-time rumor and more like a pattern. Reactions have been exactly what you'd expect. One side calls Jay-Z petty, a gatekeeper using corporate power to settle old scores and control access to the biggest platforms. The other side points out 50's long history of trolling, instigating, and turning conflict into content, suggesting this might be just another headline he knows how to generate. And the truth, like most hip-hop power struggles, likely lives somewhere in the messy middle. But here's what can't be ignored. Neither the NFL, Roc Nation, nor Jay-Z has ever officially confirmed or denied any of it, leaving 50's narrative to dominate the entire conversation. And for a lot of people watching closely, that silence speaks louder than any statement ever could. But to really understand why this runs so deep, why Jay-Z would allegedly go that far to keep 50 Cent off the Super Bowl stage, you have to rewind all the way to the beginning. Every great hip-hop rivalry has an origin story, and this one traces back to a time when Curtis Jackson wasn't the mogul we know today. Back in 1999, he was just a hungry rapper from Queens with a shaky record deal, dozens of recorded songs, and no real industry momentum. So he made a move that was bold, reckless, and completely on brand. He forced the entire culture to pay attention. Inspired by the notorious B.I.G.'s 1993 track Just Playing Dreams, 50 flipped the concept into something darker and more explosive, a fantasy about robbing the biggest names in the game. The result was How to Rob, a record that name-dropped more than 40 major artists and instantly turned him into the most talked-about newcomer in hip-hop. And no, Jay-Z didn't get a pass. 50's verse took a direct shot, painting a picture so vivid it sounded like a threat wrapped in a punchline. The kind of disrespect you don't forget, especially if you're already sitting at the top. The record spread like wildfire through white-label vinyl and mixtape circuits, getting heavy rotation from DJs like Funkmaster Flex on Hot 97, and within weeks, the industry was buzzing about this kid from Queens with the nerve to call everybody out. Most people laughed it off. Some ignored it. But Jay-Z? Jay responded, and that response set the tone for the next 2 decades. At Hot 97 Summer Jam in 1999, Jay delivered a freestyle that became legendary, dropping a line that was equal parts clever and dismissive. I'm about $1. What the F*** is 50 Cent. It wasn't just a joke, it was a message. Jay framed himself as real currency, real value, while reducing 50 to loose change. And the punchline didn't stay on stage. It later appeared on It's Hot, Some Like It Hot, from Volume 3, Life and Times of S. Carter, released in December 1999, produced by Timbaland, cementing that moment as more than a quick jab. It became the blueprint for their dynamic. 50 as the disruptor, Jay as the untouchable king refusing to take him seriously, at least publicly. And from that moment on, the tension was never really about music alone. It was about respect, power, and what happens when an outsider refuses to stay in his lane.
When it goes past the music itself to blocking things in business, then I don't understand that. Like right now, he's not even competing for a slot. You don't have a new song out that he want to be on the top 10 or top 5, and you still competing. It just don't make sense. Like, what are we competing for?
50 Cent didn't stay quiet for long. In 2000, he dropped Be a Gentleman, a direct response where he questioned Jay-Z's image and street credibility, painting him as more of a manufactured brand than the real deal. He took shots at Jay's persona, mocked his claims of being the king of New York, and made it clear that in his eyes, commercial success didn't automatically equal respect in the streets. The back and forth felt like it could have exploded into something bigger, but then reality hit in the most brutal way possible. On May 24th, 2000, 50 Cent was shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house in Queens. He survived, barely, but the consequences were massive. Columbia Records dropped him, and his debut project, Power of the Dollar, was effectively shelved. Overnight, the rivalry went quiet, not because the tension disappeared, but because 50's entire life had just been rerouted. For the next 2 years, he rebuilt from scratch, recovering, grinding, and flooding the streets with mixtapes, while Jay-Z continued his run on top, dropping classics like The Blueprint in 2001 and solidifying his dominance. But when 50 came back in 2002, everything changed. He was signed by Eminem and Dr. Dre to Shady/Aftermath, and suddenly the industry realized the problem wasn't whether he would return, it was how big the comeback was about to be. Then in February 2003, Get Rich or Die Tryin' dropped, selling 872,000 copies in its first week and eventually going diamond. Records like Into Club and 21 Questions dominated the airwaves, and overnight, the conversation shifted. It wasn't "Is 50 Cent legit?" anymore. It was, "Can anybody stop him?" And Jay-Z definitely saw it coming. In a later interview on The Breakfast Club, Jay admitted he warned his own artists that 50 was about to take over, telling them to flood the market and drop as much music as possible before 50 arrived and changed the entire landscape. What followed was a strange era of uneasy coexistence. In 2003, they appeared in the same Reebok campaign, co-headlined the Rock the Mic tour, and even crossed paths professionally in ways that made it look like the tension had cooled down. But under the surface, the competition never truly died. 50 kept positioning himself as the bigger global force, constantly pointing to numbers, sales, and impact, and even bragging that his G-Unit sneaker deal was outperforming Jay's S. Carter line. On paper, it looked like business, but in reality, it was still the same rivalry, just wearing a cleaner sway. Interview 6. 50 Cent has been unusually blunt about what he believes is Jay-Z's biggest weakness, a habit of avoiding direct confrontation. In 50's view, Jay doesn't step into conflict head-on. He stays insulated, letting other people speak, move, and take the heat on his behalf while he remains above the mess. And according to 50, that pattern has been consistent for years, no matter how personal the tension gets. Interview 7. That criticism doesn't stop behind the scenes. 50 Cent extends it to Jay-Z's public image, too. He once labeled Jay the coolest punk in hip-hop, a phrase meant to sting because it's a contradiction on purpose. In 50's eyes, Jay's polished, corporate, boardroom-ready persona makes him look smooth and untouchable to the mainstream, but too approachable in the streets, in a way that he thinks quietly chips away at the kind of fear and respect that true power demands.
There ain't never been no 50 Cent Jay-Z conversations, questioning whether there was a competition between the two of them. There's a huge difference in energy internationally in 50 Cent and Jay-Z. In fact, his largest selling record sold 430-something thousand copies. My largest selling record's plural. 2 of them sold 5 million.
50 Cent has been unusually blunt about what he believes is Jay-Z's biggest weakness, a habit of avoiding direct confrontation. In 50's view, Jay doesn't step into conflict head-on. He stays insulated, letting other people speak, move, and take the heat on his behalf while he remains above the mess. And according to 50, that pattern has been consistent for years, no matter how personal the tension gets.
There's a huge difference in who we are with each other internationally. Let them be fooled in America and think there's a competition there, because America can be purchased. We can buy it with marketing dollars. You see what I'm saying? But the rest of the world, there's not enough marketing dollars to go around to change the way the rest of the world feels about you.
That criticism doesn't stop behind the scenes. 50 Cent extends it to Jay-Z's public image, too. He once labeled Jay the coolest punk in hip-hop, a phrase meant to sting because it's a contradiction on purpose. In 50's eyes, Jay's polished, corporate, boardroom-ready persona makes him look smooth and untouchable to the mainstream, but too approachable in the streets, in a way that he thinks quietly chips away at the kind of fear and respect that true power demands.
See, he's a piece of work. Man. He always put somebody in front of him. When Jada came for him, he put Beanie in front of him. And Beanie went back and forth with Jadakiss. When Cam came for him, he put True Life in front of him. And they went back and forth. And he just didn't compete.
The implication behind 50 Cent's criticism is pretty clear. In his view, Jay-Z doesn't engage in direct conflict. He plays the game from a distance, protected by corporate structure, insulated by influence, and surrounded by people who take the hits for him. Whether you call that strategic brilliance or a sign of weakness depends entirely on who you ask. But either way, their rivalry hasn't just stayed in music. It evolved into something bigger, a battle of empires. By the mid-2000s, both men were stacking power outside of rap. In 2004, 50 Cent partnered with Glasso, the makers of vitamin water, and instead of taking a simple endorsement check, he took an equity stake, a move that would later be seen as one of the smartest business plays in hip-hop history. When Coca-Cola acquired Glasso in 2007 for roughly $4, $1 billion, 50's reported share turned into a massive payday. Meanwhile, that same year, Jay-Z sold the rights to his Rocawear clothing brand to Iconic's brand group in a landmark deal worth hundreds of millions. Both moves were major wins, but 50 never missed a chance to frame his vitamin water windfall as the smarter play, the bigger flex, and the better business mind at work. And that competitive energy didn't stop there. It followed them into every lane where cultural dominance mattered. In 2007, their rivalry took another dramatic turn when 50 Cent's album, Curtis, dropped on the exact same day as Kanye West's graduation, creating one of the most hyped sales showdowns hip-hop had ever seen. When Kanye won the battle by a wide margin, 50 didn't just take the loss quietly. He alleged that Jay-Z was pulling strings behind the scenes, using his influence at Def Jam to make sure Kanye had every advantage, essentially beating 50 by proxy without ever stepping into the fight himself. And that accusation perfectly fit 50's long-running narrative, Jay-Z as a chess player who wins wars without ever getting his hands dirty. But in more recent years, 50 Cent has pushed the rivalry into an even more personal and controversial direction, one that touches Jay-Z's most important relationship and arguably his most protected legacy, the Grammys. And if you thought the Super Bowl allegations were explosive, this next part only turns the heat up. In multiple interviews across 2023 and 2024, 50 floated a theory that's entertained his fans, infuriated Jay's supporters, and sparked endless debate online. The claim? That Jay-Z's massive Grammy success, 25 wins, making him the most awarded rapper in Grammy history, is tied less to his own musical dominance and more to his marriage to Beyoncé.
Jay's the coolest punk in hip-hop. His presentation makes people decide to say,
oh man,
you know, because he's big, and his take on it is bigger than the actual art form. He won't actually.
Now, to keep this completely fair and accurate, Jay-Z actually had 4 Grammy wins before his first collaboration with Beyoncé, not 1, as 50 Cent claims. But the bigger point 50 is making does have some statistical weight. Jay-Z's Grammy success accelerated dramatically after that era began. Out of his 25 total Grammy wins, 21 came after 2004, lining up with the rise of major joint moments, shared cultural visibility, and Jay's evolution into a more polished mogul and family man figure. And that's where 50 connects the dots. He frames it as more than coincidence, not just a change in music output, but a calculated transformation of brand and perception. In 50's eyes, Jay didn't just level up artistically, he leveled up strategically, shifting his image into something broader, safer, and more influential, the kind of identity that doesn't just win fans, but wins institutions.
Look, when Jay signed his contract, the big one was with Beyoncé. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. No, those trophies came rolling in.
This argument slides perfectly into 50 Cent's broader critique of the Grammys as an institution, one he believes rewards image, politics, and safety more than authenticity. He's repeatedly pointed out that Tupac Shakur never won a Grammy, despite being one of the most influential voices hip-hop has ever produced. And in 50's mind, that isn't just an oversight. It's proof that the Recording Academy tends to favor polished, industry-approved artists over raw pioneers who shift culture in ways the system can't control. Now, 50 Cent does have Grammys himself. He's won 3, which might explain why he talks about the awards with a mix of experience and skepticism. But the way he frames it, this isn't just personal bitterness. He positions himself as someone calling out what he sees as a rigged system, an industry that hands out trophies based on relationships, alliances, and perception, not necessarily who moved the culture the hardest. And while that alone is controversial, 50's most provocative recent commentary takes things even further, because he's repeatedly tried to connect Jay-Z to Jean-Michel Basquiat, turning the conversation from music and awards into something much bigger: power, access, legacy, and who really gets to own culture when the cameras turn off.